Hi, this is Michael Waits, and welcome to AIP's News Roundup with Rahul Mathur, an AIP ambassador and one of the best-known influencers in the InsurTech space globally. We have a new participant joining us from Hong Kong, Lyndon Reid. How you doing, Lyndon? The Chief Commercial, I got it wrong in practice, and I got it wrong live. Commercial Officer from Shift InsurTech. How is everybody doing today?
Doing really well, thanks, Michael. I chose that title just to tongue-tie people.
Yeah, so exactly. Just to screw me up. Thank you very little for that, by the way. So let's just get into it. There's a ton of news every 2 weeks. I feel like they're just dumping news onto us. Let's get into it. And the first thing I want to talk about is Aviva sold out of its blue stake to Hillhouse Capital, so the other partner in this business. And the reason why I wanted to start with this is because I don't know if it was the last time we did this or 2 times ago, but we mentioned it. And, Aviva was not quoted as saying, but intimated that they were committed to this business and they weren't going to get out. And then there they go, and they just sell it to their partner. So what do we think about this? Rahul, you want to start?
I mean, just Aviva running for the hills, Hillhouse. Sadly disappointing to see this.
I think you stole that. I think you stole that from
I did. I stole it from Lyndon. I thought it was super funny. I was trying to control my laughter before it started, but
so I really have... You take it.
It's one of those things where Aviva has been in this interesting situation for a couple of months from a group strategy perspective to exit parts of its business in Asia.
Right.
Even out in the UK, it's been shutting down stuff like its Aviva Digital Garage, which is like their innovation studio.
Right.
So it doesn't come as a surprise to me that at a group level, they've taken a decision to cut out all of these quote unquote innovative initiatives from within the company.
Right, but one of the things we talked about, and Lyndon, maybe you can comment on this. You're in Hong Kong, right? One of the things we commented on was, Hong Kong is like this gateway to China through the Greater Bay Area and all these other things. Why would they, after investing in this and trying to sell themselves as like the future of digital insurance, back out of this? What was wrong with Blue that made them get out?
I think it's a gateway in a sense of people and traffic, but in the sense of insurance, it's 2 distinct markets. China is a very different market to Hong Kong. Different regulators, different jurisdictions. As much as some of our friends to the north might like to have us believe otherwise, it's still 1 country and 2 systems. So what that means is for companies like Aviva, and MetLife went through this as well. For companies like Aviva, who are perhaps subscale in Hong Kong, they're looking at a prospect where it's going to take a tremendous amount of investment, a tremendous amount of effort to be able to reach scale, to compete with the AIAs, the Prudentials, and also the China Lifes, and so many new entrants into China recently, with Zhong'an and Ping An coming in as well. So I think the decision is really strategic. And honestly, I'm pretty... I was going to say cynical, but I'm not particularly bullish about plays like Blue. Blue isn't really a digital insurer. It's just it's a digital avenue for insurers to do exactly the same things that they've been doing for the last 100 years, but just with a particular different shade of lipstick on it. So I'm not surprised that someone like Aviva would say, well, we just don't see the long-term viability in that in Hong Kong. Right, so Hong Kong's still a very agency-driven market, and that's not likely to change in the next 3 to 5 years.
Tell me if I have this wrong about Hong Kong, but someone said to me, I believe that like 1 in every 7 people in Hong Kong is in the insurance industry. Is that close?
Yeah, I think they're all AIA agents.
Yeah, that was the thing. And that was the thing. They're all some kind of agent. Anyway, and again, interesting to me, right? You say Blue is not really a digital insurer, so fair enough. And to me, what I've figured out is a lot of these digital insurers are really just trying to create distribution mechanisms for existing insurers and reinsurers. So fair enough. And that's the thing that I've been learning over time. But it's not stopping more people from getting in. And that's the thing I want to talk to. Maybe we can segue into SingSaver. Right, so SingSaver, which is a price comparison site, is now moving into the digital comparisons for insurance. What do we think the significance of that is, if anything?
I mean, at the top of my mind, I'd say this is not exactly the biggest news. That we've got a lot of aggregators. You've got aggregators 2.0 coming in as well, which claim to use artificial intelligence to help you pick your ideal insurance price purchase. I don't know, Michael and Lyndon, whether you guys have tried any of these. They sometimes claim to have guided artificial intelligence, recommendation engines, and I think that's far from true. But it's one of those things where I need to give people credit where there's lack of information. So maybe SingSaver will come out with something interesting. But as it stands today, promise, but not exactly exciting.
No, I agree. It's not exciting at all. I think they're a dollar short and a day late. There are so many other participants and combatants in this marketplace, and many of the incumbents in this space are having some trouble. They're not finding it easy going. I'm frankly astounded. I'm only just looking at the article now for the very first time. For the life of me, can't understand why someone with the chops of Goldman Sachs is thinking about opening up a comparison site. I see the power of comparisons, but and I have used them. I've used GoBear from time to time to buy travel insurance, and I think they're okay. But their model has capacity constraints. Their model also, from a revenue perspective, has problems because they're not making it. And I'm talking about it now from, say, the insurer's perspective. They're not making it any cheaper or easier to acquire customers than other means. And in fact, in some instances, they're more expensive. So insurers are starting to shy away from them as well. It's in my view not a particularly sustainable model.
So a little bit off piste maybe, but don't you think that's also true for other sites other e-commerce sites that are using this price comparison? To me, it always seemed like a little bit of a, I don't want to use the word scam, but it already came out of my mouth in the sense that in the end, I always go check again some other price to make sure that I'm really getting the best price. And if I have to do that, then am I really believing that price comparison site to begin with? So I agree with you. Like, it doesn't scale with me, and in the end, I think people are skeptical.
Yeah,
and color me skeptical as well.
Yeah, and it also doesn't improve the overall journey or the experience for customers. Generally they're still dumped into an insurer's website where they get treated the same way they've been treated always. It's just another way to acquire customers, which, it's okay, but it's not optimal, and it still doesn't address the underlying issues in distribution.
Yeah, agreed completely, and particularly in a region, at least from where I sit, where penetration is so low. It's still so tiny, right? That includes India, but also in Southeast Asia, where I live, the penetration is so low that it hasn't made a market difference. Let's talk a little bit about this Caro news as well, right? So again, everybody seems to want to be in this space, or maybe this is just one of those things where, the first time you buy a Chevy Impala, it feels like everybody's bought a Chevy Impala, right? So maybe I'm just seeing more InsurTech news. Not that anybody would buy an Impala. But they're issuing, and this reminds me of one of the guys that we had in the studio a couple of months ago, Go Insurance, right? Trying to do this pay-as-you-drive car insurance. Yeah. What do we think about this announcement from Caro, which isn't, what they're doing has nothing to do with insurance to begin with. But go ahead, Rahul. What do you think?
So this is quite an interesting move, right? And we're kind of starting to see this downstream movement of marketplaces that typically are insurance distribution channels actually raising very large sums of money and then setting up their own insurance brokers in-house. Right. What I found fairly interesting is Caro's pay-as-you-drive insurance ties in very well with their subscription model, because they've typically price their bundled insurance in their easy monthly subscription installment. Right. And what they're doing is, if you drive less than 1,500 kilometers in a given month, they rebate you, and the rebate is cancelled from the following month's subscription fee. So it ties in quite well with their model. Well, I think it's also going to be a first step towards maybe harnessing a bit more of the telematics data. That's what I was going to ask. Because pay-as-you-drive is a simple pro rata, whereas they're not exactly harnessing the power of telematics. But I think this is a step in perhaps an interesting direction which they might take, because they're trying to get a digital banking license in Singapore, which just blew my mind.
Digital banking license.
Yeah.
I like the play. I actually like Caro a lot. I think the platform is great. I've spoken to the guys, or some of the guys there, because this is very much waters that that Shift fishes in terms of using affinities or platforms that have large groups of customers already to be able to plug into that distribution aspect and to put insurance into that model. And if anything, that's the way I see insurance moving, is becoming more embedded in value chains rather than being a discrete purchase, which is why I don't like the disruption argument. But anyway, that's probably a story for another day. So I like what Car is doing, and I know they're interested in doing insurance, and I know they're interested in doing a lot of stuff, because even though you think, okay, well, it's just a car sales platform, there are a lot of ancillary decisions that you make when you're buying a car. And number one of those, besides how you're going to pay for it, is insurance, right? So, and a lot of that is statutory, it's mandated. So cars are one of the very few things where you have to buy an insurance policy, even if it's only third-party liability. So offering that on your platform is kind of a natural adjunct. What I don't really like is the usage-based stuff. I think it's Mickey Mouse and it's gimmicky, but you know, if it gives you a hook where customers think they're getting some sort of extra value, then great. But I think when you scratch the surface, there's really not much extra value to be gained for customers through usage-based at the moment.
So a couple of questions, right? So one is, and this is new and used car buying and selling, right? So I get it, right? And I understand the idea of embedding insurance into everything. I have questions and doubts myself about whether people want to pay for things that they don't know that they're paying for yet. We see this a lot with the airlines, but in the end, but in the end,
I don't mean that.
No, I get it. But one of the things we talked about, again, a couple of months ago was Tesla is going to become an insurer.
Yeah.
Right? So they're going to actually sell insurance with their cars. So I guess my question is, if they're going to lead that market from a manufacturing standpoint, what's just going to stop Ford or General Motors? And I'm using them as a proxy for companies like Toyota and whatever, who already run big financing, so already are financial services firms. What's going to stop them from providing insurance as well? That's my first question.
The Tesla one's an interesting one, because I don't want to speak out of school here, but insurers generally are very down on Tesla because they're super expensive to repair. And so most insurers have been burnt who have been writing Tesla have been burnt on it. So I think that's become a huge issue for Tesla, and may have been one of the driving factors behind them saying, well, we better set up something for ourselves. Yeah. The other thing about Tesla is they're collecting huge amounts of data, however you prefer to pronounce it. But and I think what they think is they can make a bet that they can price better than the insurers can.
Yeah. Because they're already collecting that data, by the way.
Yeah, that's right. And they're collecting
telematics
it now
built in.
Longitudinally. Yeah, it's been collected over a decent amount of time. So the data set that they would have created is enormous. And I think they could probably put that to good use. And they might have even offered that to insurers, but I know that there's no insurer yet that's well positioned to be able to take advantage of that kind of data. So they may have said, well, we'll just do it ourselves. And that's a very Elon Musk thing to do. Yeah. And I would be extraordinarily hesitant to bet against Elon in this space. Insurance is not that hard, believe me. And
so that was my first question, but you brought up my second question, and that is, and I was having this conversation with somebody else again. This was orthogonally because it wasn't directly related to cars or insurance, but the car companies themselves should want this data, right? They should want this data so they know what's happening with their cars. So that telematics stuff should be almost as important as it is to the insurance companies as it is to the car companies, and vice versa. Right. So you said it's a little bit of a Mickey Mouse thing. I think that data collection thing actually ends up being really important, and maybe it is just a hook. But I think over time, that data becomes hugely powerful.
Yeah, not to be clear, I don't think data is Mickey Mouse. Quite the opposite. I'm a firm believer that data will be the currency, and some people describe it as the oil of the future. Perhaps let's not go that far. But but the Mickey Mouse for me was just the usage-based insurance at the moment. You only drive 200 Ks a month, you get a premium price less than if you drove 300 Ks. Well, that's there's not much really in that. But Car is a Malaysian-based company, and there's another company called Telemana in Malaysia, which is not necessarily insurance-based, but they have there's a couple of others that spring to mind that are doing some awesome stuff in telematics. Now, we're probably at the dawn of that progression before it really starts to impact insurance. But over the next 3 to 5 years, as that technology becomes more prevalent and more widely accepted, then I think you're going to really see some changes in the auto space. But I do think that's a little way away yet.
Agreed. But again, like I said, I think that this accumulation of data by a company like Tesla, whether they're liked by the insurance companies or not, people are going to find themselves just behind the 8 ball because they're going to have all this data and nobody else is going to have it yet. And cars like Toyota, Nissan, GM, Ford are all going to want it. Yep. They're going to have to start playing catch up to get there.
I'm just going to throw in a very random comment here, which says an actuary costs 1/3 a software engineer does. Smiley face.
Fair enough. I'm not sure what the point was, but okay, fair enough. Hire more actuaries, hire fewer software developers.
Some actuaries are expensive, but that's interesting.
Yay! You'd be amazed. A software engineer and actuary at the same level of qualification have like a huge pay gap. But the point really is that Tesla is already looking at insurance. They're trying to set up their own captive out in the States. Right. In the UK, they've had an InsurTech called Buy Miles come out, which is using the Tesla plug-in device to just, not the plug, but well, the native Tesla telematics device to price insurance. Yeah, this is the future. So it's going to happen.
Yeah, so maybe what we should do is we should embed every software developer with an actuary. I don't know if that's possible, but I guess anything's going to be possible in the future. Okay, let's talk a little bit about how what happened with Car. You said you want to maybe relate that to what's going on in India. More companies raising more money, right? So Digit just raised an $80 million plus round.
See, it's an interesting one, right? So Digit, as yet, as per the registrar company filings, hasn't got the money in the bank, hasn't issued the shares. But this is going to be one of the big rounds where they're getting a private equity investor. They've so far been raising money only from Fairfax Financial Holdings. So you could almost think of them as a Fairfax subsidiary. Right. It's the first time they're going out and raising that external round. Right. What's very interesting is their loss ratio seems to have stabilized somewhere around the 100. This is not the loss ratio. I think it's the combined ratio, somewhere close to about 120%, which is not too bad. And I think we've seen some full stack InsurTechs going in the 200 ranges at some points. They're probably burning for growth, and there's also an aspect of them launching health insurance. So this will be a very interesting move, quite close to a $1 billion valuation. But interestingly, since we discussed Aviva, the team here set up Aviva in India. So good fond memories. I'm sure they'd be disappointed to see Aviva exit India if that does happen.
But can I ask you this? And Lyndon, maybe you can comment on this as well. So is Digit Insurance just another distribution platform, or are they a full stack insurer with a license and stuff like that?
They're a full stack carrier. They've got their own registered license, so they do all of the disclosures an insurance company does.
Got it.
So it's actually quite a transparent business, right? So if you go on the insurance regulator's website, you will get all of their operating KPI.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's a fascinating stage. And I don't use the word fascinating insurance in the same sentence very often, but I think it's a fascinating stage in the life cycle of these kind of full stack insurers. And there are a number of them. We all know who they are. In insurance, they're becoming kind of akin to household words. But they've built their platforms. So they've used their seed and Series A money to build platform, to build their tech, and to get their infrastructure set. And what they're now looking to do is reach scale, right? And that naturally, right? That's obvious. But scale for these guys means customer acquisition. And customer acquisition is tremendously difficult and tremendously expensive. And so they're now taking big bets on, at the $80-100 million range on being able to acquire sufficient customers to be able to reach scale or sustainability. And I think that's going to be extraordinarily problematic for them.
Can I jump in for a second? So you brought up, again, two really good things. It's hard to acquire customers, and the acquisition of those customers are really expensive. Can you just dig a little bit deeper from your perspective and just say, why that is the case? Is it an Asia-specific thing? Is it a global thing? Is that true in Europe as well? Like, why is it so expensive, and why is it
Can't
so
really
hard?
speak for Europe, but I think that you have to look at what we're selling, right? And we're selling insurance, which is not a product which is, everyone, it's sold, not bought. And in some senses, I liken it to the exercise of polishing a turd, right? It's very it's something you probably shouldn't. It's probably something you shouldn't embark upon in the first place, but they have. And so when you're trying to sell that to people who are inherently distrustful, and don't really want to buy it in the first place, so that means that the acquisition, in a sense, not the hard acquisition, but in terms of the engagement, right? Getting people to the line where they trust what you're saying to buy from a Trove or a Digit over an Allianz or an AIG, right? Because the products are essentially the same. No one's really cracked the golden lacuna of this kind of killer product in insurance that people are going to flock to. Now, there are a couple that people buy axiomatically, which is travel, and travel is something I've been involved with in the past. And I know, so getting people to buy travel is not that difficult, but nevertheless, the acquisition cost of getting them, because the market's quite saturated, there's a lot of competition. Getting them across to you is very expensive, and it runs somewhere between 25 to 40% of every premium dollar you spend when you buy travel insurance goes in the purchase of your business, if you like, into customer acquisition.
So
that's a big number.
Yeah, it's huge. Go ahead, Rahul.
Now, I'm with Lyndon here, right? I think Lyndon's raised a nice point from the fact that insurance is anyways difficult to sell. So you're paying, an insurance company is paying this trust premium in customer acquisition cost to actually acquire you. But then there's also the fact that insurance has typically been a lower churn, high LTV business, and customer acquisition costs tend to move in line for most industries with a customer lifetime value. So simply because we're a high LTV business, it's also going to be a high CAC business. But this goes back to the point that Lyndon made about Caro and you make about alternative distribution, Michael. Can these full stack carriers with a much leaner organization, much lower cost base, outcompete to distribute insurance via platforms? So, for example, can you enter into an exclusive deal with the Indian analog to Caro called Car-Dekho and be their preferred insurance vendor, plugged into their system, and use them to acquire customers for you, and therefore, at an organizational level, incur a lower CAC? That's going to be a challenge, right? And no one's done this before, and Lyndon has a point. It's going to be one for us to see, but that's what makes it interesting, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
again, the other interesting thing that Lyndon said was that it's axiomatic that people, like, the travel insurance is something that people do buy a lot. That's actually the one type of insurance I almost never buy.
You're the one we're chasing.
But I will say this, though, one of the reasons why, and this gets back to this thought of embedding products that I've been having for a couple of decades, is that my Visa card or my American Express card has always had travel insurance included in it anyway. And I never thought about, like, what that was actually costing me. Is that part of my membership fee? Like, how does that work? But if AirAsia offers me travel insurance, I just say no, because I already have it. At least I thought I did.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. But you already have it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And the other thing, yeah, exactly. But I didn't ask for it, right? So I
No.
and like you said, and this is sort of the catchphrase that everybody has, right? Insurance isn't bought, it's sold kind of thing. But that was just kind of given, like, or gifted to me, I guess, at some level.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of the way most people think about it. Yeah. And I guess the other question, sorry, one more thing. What is a company like Digit trying to accomplish? Are they really trying to disintermediate the existing insurance companies, like the big ones whose names, like you said, we all know? Are they really trying to go out there and say, we're just going to leapfrog you? And is it partially because, as Rahul mentioned, they're digitally natives? They started by building platforms, just like you talked about, and everything is kind of API-able. So plugging into a new distribution methodology is simpler for them than it would be for, insert your fancy company name.
I think there's a lot of that. I think it does, and Rahul was very scientific in his last comments, which was putting it much more succinctly than I was. But I think it does come back to this kind of question of customer lifetime value, which is something that traditional insurers struggle with. They sell one policy to someone, and then that's it. They hang up the phone, or they file it away, and they think, okay, we've got that person as a customer now. They very rarely start thinking about, okay, what else can we sell to them, or how much more can we sell to them, and what kind of, or they try to maximize the value of that one sale, because they figure they're not going to be coming back to them again, rather than saying, well, we'll just sell them a little bit now, and get them to a point where they trust us, and we'll give them good service on the stuff that we've already sold them, and then we'll make them repeat buyers. So nothing about scamming or trying to entice them to do things they don't want to do, but just doing the right thing by them to create a positive customer sentiment. And I think that the digital players have the right intention as far as that's concerned. They understand customer lifetime value. They understand customer experience, and they understand what they have to do to keep a customer happy. And I think what their bet is that if they can do that well and create customer stickiness and a high customer lifetime value, then the valuation multiple will bear itself out, because they'll prove me wrong about customer acquisition costs, and they'll be they'll create high valuations because of all the policies they're going to sell. But it's going to be an incredibly hard row to hoe for them in terms of the battle with incumbents. And I'm not talking about a battle for disruption, but I'm talking about this almost trust factor of getting people away from the understanding that okay, I buy my insurance from an insurance company, and these guys that have come along, I don't really know whether they're going to be around in 5 or 10 years or not. And I do think that's a factor.
Yeah.
Right, but so this is the question that I had with, I believe it was Walter, right, the CEO of Singapore Life. I brought it up with him, and I said, people want to deal with a company like, and again, insert whatever company you want, because they've been around for 150 years. And he said, yeah, but that's kind of a misconception. We haven't been around for 150 years, but we have our own license. We have written policies for 25 years. We're not going away, and we're funded by some of the biggest companies in the world. So.
Well, Walter's going to say that, isn't he? Because
I get it. He's saying that because he's self-interested to say that.
Yeah.
Because my question to him was the same comment you made, which was, MetLife has been around for 153 years.
Yeah.
That's just a fact. Yeah.
But then you look at the customer surveys where people talk about, if they're offered insurance by Apple or by Amazon, would they buy them? And most people answer in the very high affirmative range, because of the trust.
Right, they already trust them.
Yeah.
Okay, let's jump a little bit, because we're slightly running out of time. So I'm going to just jump ahead. I live in Thailand. I've interviewed the head of the OIC, so the Office of Insurance Commission, and they've announced actually that they're studying the possibility of issuing special licenses. Remember, there are 71 licenses already for insurance businesses in Thailand, and they're trying to consolidate those. They're encouraging consolidation, but here they are saying they're considering issuing special licenses for digital insurance. What do we think they're doing that for?
This is the very first thought that comes to mind, Michael, is you, Teresa, and I briefly discussed the fact that they were in talks with the Hong Kong Insurance Authority, the HKIA, regarding their digital insurance licenses. So it almost seems like they're drawing some inspiration from Hong Kong on the basis of a previous regulatory level discussion that they had. Okay. I think it's interesting, fairly interesting, exactly, because 2 months ago, you taught me something very interesting. You just pointed out that they're trying to curb the number of insurers in existence, almost forcing a new player to buy out an existing one, right, or old players buying out each other. So very interesting. I don't know how this is going to play out.
What's your view on this?
Yeah, I agree with Rahul. It is very interesting. I think there's a certain amount of competition amongst regulators. I know that sounds weird, but they all talk to each other, and none of the Southeast Asian regulators want to be seen as laggards. Right. Although they have varying degrees of bureaucracy, from painful to excruciating. I don't want to get myself offside with regulators here, but
why stop now?
Yeah, exactly. I'll dip my toe in now. So they don't. So no one wants to be seen as lagging, And one of the mandates for a regulator is to improve the lot for the customer, right? To maximize customer benefit from a product, and also for consumer protection. But so they need to pursue these things in order to fulfill that mandate. The other thing is going full circle back to something we said at the very outset of the recording. There's a penetration issue in Southeast Asia. Only there's a very minor percentage, 2 to 4% of penetration throughout the markets, and most I don't know of it. There's varying degrees of acceptance or sanguineness, if you like, about digitalization across insurers in Southeast Asia. But one common element I always see when I'm talking to participants in the industry is that they understand that the way to bridge the penetration gap isn't by using legacy models. They're only going to get more people into the market by using digital distribution, digital models, because the products are going to be extremely small ticket and high volume, and the old ways of doing business don't lend themselves to that model at all. In fact, they're simply not sustainable. And so that's one of the reasons why you see a low penetration gap, because insurers hitherto haven't been able to find ways to sell insurance efficiently and cheaply, right? And digital means offer them that avenue. So I think for the regulators, they need to start pushing the industry into digital means of distribution.
Got it. And look, I want to end on Sunday, not the day of Sunday, but Sunday, the full stack insurer that's based in Thailand, and talk about their company raise. I mean, their capital raise. So they've announced an $11 million extension, which I find, again, interesting, just the terminology, to their Series A. And I'm curious what you both think about this.
See, on very quickly, Michael, on the extension part, they raised a 10 million A in February of this year. Right. And I believe part of that commitment was towards regulatory capital. One of the interesting things is they never clarify whether it was all venture capital or part of it venture debt or institutional debt. So this is probably the venture money coming in, and very interesting Indian fund called Quona Capital.
Right.
So quite interesting.
And I don't want to rain on that parade, but it's a beautiful name for an insurance company. But
SEO.
one thing you have to, when you dig a little bit underneath the surface there on Sunday, you realize they have some pretty significant backing and the stakes from the KSK group in Malaysia. So this is not a kind of pardon me for saying, and forgive me if I sound like I'm again running on their parade. It's not a true startup, right?
Neither was Blue, right? We've been through this. I completely agree. But they sell themselves like that. Again, they give themselves this kind of cute name, right? They call themselves Sunday as opposed to just like a subsidiary of whatever. I agree with you. Sorry, go ahead. I interrupted you.
No, that's okay. I was pretty much finished. I was just rambling.
No, you weren't. But I do think this is indicative of a small trend that I'm starting to see as well, and that is you have all these companies that are selling themselves as startups, when in reality they're being funded by, even Sing Life, to be fair, is funded by some of the hugest companies in the world. So is it really a startup, or is it just like a funded subsidiary of another company? I don't know.
Go on, Lyndon.
Sorry, hold on.
This reminds me of the innovator's dilemma. It's the big insurance company with a few billion on its balance sheet says, you know what? I don't know whether this whole digital insurance thing will actually play out. I've got enough money to buy anything that moves under the sun. I can afford to put 25 million into this really smart insurance executive who's running this startup here. If he does reasonably well, I can always engage in a leverage buyout and just acquire the whole book. So it's a low cost way of learning. You typically end up taking a board seat.
I'll definitely give Walter his chops. I think Sing Life was a true startup. They did attract some heavy private money in the initial phases.
Fair
enough. So definitely a true startup. And you have to give Walter a tremendous amount of credit. The guy could sell ice to Eskimos. And he has done a phenomenal job of selling that story. So there's parts of Sing Life I think are fantastic, and there are other parts where I think they're probably over-egging the pudding a little bit, but they have done a fantastic job of selling it and attracting the capital necessary to achieve that vision. They're not going anywhere. That's for sure. They're not a startup anymore.
They're not a startup anymore, and they've raised, I believe, over 150. I think the real number is 173 million dollars. I don't think they're going away, and their backers are really solid balance sheets. I think that's a good way to end. I will wonder why they hired the guy from Crazy Rich Asians to be their spokesperson, but nobody's perfect. Anyway, okay, you guys are awesome. I really appreciate you doing this. Lyndon, it was great to have you. You should do this again.
Anytime.
Rahul, you were awesome as usual. Thank you both again.
Thank you.